Welcome back, guys. It's Israel. So, you are creating an app and need to find a way to authenticate your users. But creating all of that from scratch takes a long time. So how about you just implement the Facebook login? It's easy to add into any Angular application, and setting up the .NET API side of things is very easy as well. And with having Facebook to log in with, on your web app, it allows your users to have something convenient while also very familiar to them. So with those benefits in mind, let's set up our Angular client side with the Facebook SDK and the button. And let's update our .NET API with everything it needs to verify that we got a valid Facebook token. So now let's dive into the project. So quickly, for any of you that might have just found my channel, I will be using the Angular.NET project I have been using in my JWT authentication and authorization playlist. So if you want to learn more about JSON web tokens, refresh tokens, cookies, how to sign in with Google, and all that and more, just go click on that playlist. There should be a card at the top if you're interested. And all the code for this project will be in the GitHub repos in the description. So now let me quickly just show you guys the projects that we have, just to remind you guys what we have. So this project is, again, an Angular client side. If we go here to localhost, we'll see that we just have a regular login form. We have logging in with Google, which is its own video, so check that out if you're interested. And then down here, we're going to be adding the Facebook button. And then let me quickly show you guys the API, which is already running. As we can see here, we have an API with a login, refresh token, login with Google method, register, and then our get color list was kind of the only method of data that we're kind of making sure that, our tokens would work in our other videos. But these are all the endpoints we have, and that's our front end. So now let's actually move into logging in with Facebook. So before we can even start adding in the Facebook SDK into our client side, we first need to create a developer account with Facebook. So go to developers.facebook.com. And if you already have a Facebook account, you should be able to just link it now to a new developer account. If not, obviously you have to create a new Facebook account, blah, 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 blah. But once you have that all set up, you just go to My Apps. I already have an app created, but if you don't have anything, you go to Create App, select the type of app you want. I'm going to select Consumer because I want Facebook login. Click next, and then you create an app name. I believe it pulls this email from your Facebook account, so you can change it if you want. And then I didn't select anything here because it's not a business account. And then you just create your app. And once you have your app created, you can open it here. And you should be able to kind of see that it's created. If you scroll down here, you'd hopefully see that in your products, you have the Facebook login. That means that we have, kind of configured that this is something that we actually want to use. And then if you go to your settings, so you'll need to take note of your app ID here and your app secret. We're going to be using them later. And make sure that your site URL down here also is HTTPS. Facebook SDK needs SSL. It needs to be HTTPS. If not, it's not going to work. And I'll show you guys how to run your project with an SSL. So that works. And if you click over to advanced, the only thing you really need to take note of here is the API version that you have. And one last thing that you do have to set up in the Facebook portal is you have to go right here to the Facebook login settings and go down here to login with JavaScript SDK because it might throw you this error. And then we're going to need HTTPS localhost, kind of how we already had in the other place. We're also going to need that here. We're going to toggle this and then set the allowed domain and then save it. So once you've done that, that's really all you have to do in this portal. You just need to make a note of this app ID and this app secret because we are going to need them later. So now let's go and actually click Facebook login, quick start. And you're going to see the 4 options for kind of how to add Facebook login. So we're going to click on the web. Make sure, like I said earlier, you have HTTPS because Facebook SDK needs SSL, needs to be secure. So once you have that, save and continue. And now we're going to get to where I had conflicts with how they are telling you to do this. This isn't pretty. I don't like this. And some of you that might have watched my Google video might be like, oh, but in your video, you ended up using something like this. And yeah, I didn't like this within Angular, within my TypeScript. I didn't like it. So I had a problem with how they want to do this and kind of using this. So from here is where I differ from what they're kind of telling you. So let me show you guys how I did it. And I think it's nicer and it still works. So instead of doing what they were suggesting, I'm instead going to go to my index.html and I'm going to add in this script tag right here. This script tag is already going to go ahead and call my Facebook SDK right here. As you can see, this version 16, my app ID is in here, and everything that I need to call the Facebook SDK is already right here in my index. If any of you are wondering how I got this script right here, all you have to do is open up, go to developers.facebook.com/docs /Facebook login /web /login button. And then you get to a page that looks like this. You come down here, you put in some information, and as long as you're signed in, you click get code, and it will put all your information right here, and then you can just copy this script tag and put it in your index.html, and I think that's a much better solution than doing this junk right here. So let's keep it going. Now with this added in here, let's go and add our Facebook button on the front end. And now that we're here, we're gonna go down here and we're gonna add a Facebook button, a login with Facebook, and we're gonna do a login method right here. And this is gonna be for logging in with Facebook. So now I'm gonna go to the bottom of my login.component.ts file, and we're gonna put in the login method. So this is the login method from the Facebook button. We're going to have fb.login. This is going to call the Facebook SDK login method. This will bring up that Facebook pop-up. You know, if you're logged into your Facebook account, it's going to ask you, like, hey, this application wants these things from you. Do you accept? And if you're not logged into your Facebook account, then it's going to ask you to log in, then accept the, you know, kind of things that the application is requesting from you. Down here, if you see this scope, this is that we are also, other than just asking for the basic, you know, user things from their profile that are the very basic public stuff, like their first name, last name, stuff like that. We also want to include their email. In this scope, you could also include other things like their friends list and a whole list of things that you could find in the Facebook docs. But once this kind of fb.login is called, we're going to get the result of the access token once the user accepts and logs in and all that stuff. We're going to get the access token from Facebook, and then we're going to send that into our API, into this login with Facebook method that we're going to create in a second, and then go and authenticate everything else in our .NET API. But now let's actually create a constant that we need. This constant is going to be for this FB right here, so that TypeScript stops having an issue with it. We're going to add that in right here. And now let's go ahead and create this login with Facebook method in our service. Now that we're in our service, we're going to create that login with Facebook method. It's going to be very similar to the login with Google one. It's going to be an HTTP post, and we're going to do login with Facebook. It's going to be the path, and we're going to stringify the credentials that we get from Facebook. And we're going to make sure that we include with credentials here so that whenever our API responds with our access tokens, we are able to retrieve them successfully. And now that we've created that login with Facebook method, we should be able to now see the front end in action. So if we open this, I opened it in an incognito window. You should be able to see this login with Facebook button. Needs a little bit of styling work, but the button is there. And if we click it, we should see that Facebook. So now it's asking me to kind of sign in right here, but it's an issue because I'm on incognito right now. And we're not running on HTTPS. So let me show you guys how to actually run this project in HTTPS. So I stop my project, and you're going to need to run this command. It's going to be ngserve --SSL true. What that's going to do is it's going to run this project with an SSL within Angular in this dev environment. And it's going to allow Facebook to be like, hey, we're good. It has an SSL. Don't trip about nothing. We're good. So I have incognito up, and I'm going to go to https:/localhost 4200. And now we're going to click enter. And now that we're in, we should see a login with Facebook button. Looks a little ugly. You can use some styling, but it's the correct button. And we're going to click it, and we should see a pop-up that looks like this. And now you should be able to log in and do all of that. But it's not going to work because our API isn't set up correctly. But this shows you that the Facebook SDK is working and the front end is good to go. And now let's move on to setting up the back end. Cool, so now that our front end is set up, now we can go ahead and add in everything that we need in our backend API to grab that access token that we get back from Facebook that was right here. So we're gonna take this access token and we need to say, hey, is this legit? If so, now we can actually give the user, hey, you get the green light, you're good to go. Now let's give you our access tokens so that now within our API, you can access whatever resources you want. So let's go ahead and set all that up in the backend. So first thing that we're going to need to do here is we are going to need to go to our app settings, and we're going to have to add a few things. And that is going to be, we're going to need to add in slots for our Facebook app ID and our secret. And that's going to be the stuff that was in the Facebook portal that I told you guys earlier. So let's add that in. So in your app settings, go ahead and change it to have your Facebook app ID here, and then your Facebook secret. Obviously keep your Facebook secret a secret, but it goes right here. And now we do have an associated model that goes along with this app settings so that we can grab these in our controller. And that's going to be this app settings model right here. So now let's change it to fit, the new structure that we have. So to change this app settings model to what we have now, you need to add a long Facebook app ID and a string Facebook secret. And now let's move on to some of our other changes. So now right under our login with Google method, we're going to create our login with Facebook method, the one that service that we have right here was referencing right here. So let's go create that. This is going to be the top part of the method. HTTP post, login with Facebook, public async task, action result, and login with Facebook. And then from the body, we are going to be getting our credential that we're passing in. And now what we need to do is take this credential and ask Facebook, hey, dude, is this legit? Is this credential that we're getting legit? And this is the endpoint that we're going to have to hit. So we are going to need to do an HTTP client, get async, and we're going to have to go to the endpoint graph.facebook.com /debug token question input token equals the credential that we get back. And then you need to also pass in your access token. Your access token is going to be your Facebook app ID, and then you need to do this pipe, this vertical line, and then you need to pass in your Facebook secret here. That's all you need to pass in to verify is the credential that we got from Facebook from the front end that got passed into our back end, is it legit? But as you see, we're using HTTP client, so we need to create an instance of HTTP client and set that up in our application. So before we continue with the rest of this method, let's set that up in our app. So to set up HTTP client, you're going to have to go back to the top, private read-only HTTP client, and then in your constructor, add this in here. And then you're going to just do the typical tab, this.http client equals HTTP client. And now we have that. And now we also need to go to our program.cs and add it into the services because it needs to be injected correctly. And to do that, we just have to add this one simple line right here. Boom, builder.services, add HTTP client, and we have HTTP client to call out to whatever other APIs we need. Now that that's set up, we can go back to our method. So now the next thing is we need to go to this HTTP response message object and actually extract the object response that we get back from Facebook. And to do that, we're going to do this code. So we're going to do the debug token response, the content of the response message, and read it as a string. And then we're going to convert that into an actual FB user object. This is the model we're going to have to create, and we're going to do that right now. So go into your models, and we're going to do add a new item, and we're going to create an FB user class. And once you've created this FB user class, this is what the model is going to look like. It is going to contain data is going to be the root, and then under this, you're going to have the data, which is going to have an app ID, a type, an application, data access expires at a certain time, expires at. Is it valid? So this will be basically what we check, like, hey, is the access token good or, true or false? And then we're going to have the scopes. The scopes are going to be what we defined. If you guys remember, I made a point. The scopes are going to be these. And then we're going to get the user ID, which should be my user ID, right? So this is the object, and these are the JSON properties. And this was kind of a struggle to map, so make sure you pay attention to how this model looks. And now going back to the method, you can see that the squiggly line went away. We now have our actual model, and we can move on to the next part of this method. And that is first going to be checking, hey, is our access token valid? So, did this say, hey, are we good? If not, we're going to return unauthorized. We had an issue with the access token that you passed back. But if we're good, we can move on to the next part. And that is, since we had a valid access token, let's now go request Facebook, hey, can you give me the information of the user that did it? Since in this object, they don't actually give you like an email or anything like that. So now that we've confirmed that access token was legit, we now need to go and grab more information about the user, because in my specific application, their email is their username. So I need to make sure that they are already in the system so that I feel comfortable enough to give them an access token and confirm that they are signed in. So to do that, we need to hit a specific endpoint. So again, very similar to above, we're going to do another HTTP client get async, but the endpoint's going to be different. It's going to be graph.facebook.com /me. And we're going to ask for certain fields. There's a whole list of them that you can ask for, but this is what I want: first name, last name, and importantly, email, which I wouldn't get back if I had not stated the scope of email on the front end. And then I'm going to pass in my access token, which is the credential that we've already confirmed to be good. It'll give me back all that information in an object, which I'll turn into a string, and then turn it into this object of FB user info, which I need to create the model for. And let's go ahead and do that right now. And once you've created FB user info, this is what it's actually going to have inside of it. And it's only going to be the properties that we are actually asking for. Like I said, you can ask for more. So this could be, you could add more things to this, but I only want the first name, last name, email, and ID. And again, it's going to be a similar structure to before, because Facebook kind of gives you a kind of interesting looking object that's hard to manage, but this is what I'm using and this is what I need. And now going back, we have this working. So now at this point, you would get the email And now I want to, in my database, confirm that the user exists. And if he exists, I can now give them, the JSON web token that they can go ahead and use to access other resources now that they're going to be logged in. So now the final part of this application is going to be, I'm now going to take the email of the user that I got back from Facebook, and I'm going to look it up in my database and check, hey, does he exist? If he does exist, we're going to go to our JWT generator method. In this method, like I've stated in other previous videos, basically we create a JWT for someone and we're going to stuff it in our HTTP only cookie with a refresh token and the access token, and all of that happens. Go check out those other videos for more explanation on this. But all that's happening in this JWT generator is we're basically giving it the access tokens. The front end's going to need to access other resources, other endpoints in this API. But going back, that's all we're going to need here. And we're going to return OK and return the cookie. And the client side should be logged in successfully into the next page of the application. And that should be all that we need to successfully go from the client side to the back end using Facebook and have a successful Facebook login. And now let me go ahead and show you guys all of this working, all of it in action. But just before I test the Facebook login, I'd like to ask you guys to drop a like on this video if you found it helpful so far so that it spreads to other developers on YouTube. Thank you. So now that we have all the code set up for the Facebook login to work, I'm just going to put a breakpoint right here. And then in the front end, I put two debuggers, one right here at the login and one right here, right after the fb.login. So we can kind of step through and you guys can kind of see what is going on. But the last thing, and something that I did miss within our API, is you need to go back here with your origins and you need to add in the HTTPS localhost origin. If not, you're going to get a CORS error. So don't miss that. But now let's actually go and test. So I went ahead and opened a new incognito window and we're going to go to HTTPS localhost again. We're going to now click on the login with Facebook and hopefully we can actually successfully log in now. So we're going to open this. Let me get back here. You're going to sign in and log in. And this should take a second, but it should kick you in. And now, as you can see, we are in our application. We are now getting the response from the Facebook SDK. We can see this, that we are getting all the objects and we're getting the access token, which is what we really want. And we're getting a few other information, but what we really care about is this access token. Let's pass it through and step through. We are now in our API. We are getting that credential still. And now let's check and see if our token is valid by going to this debug token endpoint. Let's step through and let's check if our object and model got set correctly. We are now seeing in our object, we see our app ID correctly. We see the application name and we see again more times. And is it valid? It's true. That means that we pass in obviously a good token. And then we check our scopes. We see that we have access to their friends, their email, and that they're a public profile. And we see, again, type user and our user ID. But what we really care about is it a valid token? Yes. So now with that being said, we're not unauthorized. And now we can actually go and get the user's information. So again, let's step through and let's see what information we get back. We can see that we're getting my email that is used for my Facebook account, and my first name, last name, and then my ID. So we are again getting the email. So now we can go into my database and check, hey, do I exist to properly sign this person in? And we should be able to get that, yes, I do exist. So now what's going to happen is we should be able to continue, go back to our front end, and it should sign me in successfully. And now I'm logged in. And if we go into the back and we check our cookie, we should be able to see that we have our refresh token and our access token. That means that everything worked correctly and we were able to sign in with Facebook. And that's all we had to do to set up our Angular and our .NET API to log in with Facebook. And now that you can sign in with Facebook, you may be thinking to yourself, we're all good. We can just hand the user back a JSON web token and store it in local storage. Well, that's not correct, as you can see from what I'm doing. So you might want to watch this video to learn why just handing someone a JWT and putting it in local storage is a terrible decision.